Yep, I'm still in a racing game kind of mood, and what better to play than a game that involves a lot of racing and a lot of carnage. This game is, of course, Flatout, a game I first played on my PS2 many years ago, and then picked up on PC because, why the hell not? It's definitely not your typical racing game, as there's a lot of Demolition Derby style crashing involved. There's really no plot to be had here. You start the game up, name your racer, choose a gender, select your handling level, and then you get to choose the solo campaign or multiplayer. Of course, since I barely touch multiplayer games, since I'm an antisocial bastard, I went right for the single player. When you start your career, you'll find that you have $4,000 and a choice between 5 different vehicles. Overall, there's about 15 or 16 total, with another 5 opening up each time you complete the circuit you're in, of which there's 3, bronze, silver, and gold. There's also a bonus option, but I'll get to that later. Only by reaching top 3 in all bronze events will the silver open up, and repeat that for the gold. In addition, each cup only has a limited number of tracks available at first. Again, by reaching the top 3 in a race, you'll unlock the track that is below the one you competed in. So since the game is a racing game, let's talk about that. Each race has a total of 8 vehicles, including yourself. There's nothing special about the racing rules. You do laps on the track and attempt to finish ahead of your opponents. What's not typical is the complete chaos you may encounter. The cars you drive are all beaters, and there's a ton of crap littering the tracks. And that's not even counting the aggressive driving nature of your opponents. Where most games tell you not to crash into things, Flatout encourages it. Smashing into objects nets you a bit of turbo and bonus cash at the end of the race. And smashing into your opponents also rewards nitro, and may cause them to crash even worse. Of course, they'll be doing the same to you though. And you can't just drive completely recklessly, as the cars take noticeable damage. And unlike most games I've played that show damage, it's not simply cosmetic here. After smacking walls a few times, you might notice that your car is slanting to the side a bit without you steering it in that direction. You might also notice that your top speed decreases. So yeah, if you see your engine on fire, your performance will most likely drop. It's a very cool feature that makes you wait crashing into your neighbors or playing it safe. Of course, playing it safe isn't nearly as enjoyable. There's something extremely satisfying about rear-ending the car ahead of you and watching pieces of metal go flying into the air. Or even seeing an opponent totter a bit and then you just give them a little bit of a nudge to make them start rolling uncontrollably. Hell, it's fun to hang back and watch them do it to themselves. Being that the majority of the tracks are on dirt, it's very simple to accidentally wipe out. Hell, a simple crash into a tire barrier might put you in the last place if you can't recover yourself. This is a game that favors control over speed. If you can't get over that fact, Flatout is not the game for you. In fact, in one of the final races, I was actually slowing down before jumps, because if not, the car hits the ground so hard, and my suspension and axles were so effed up I could barely drive it. At least, I can only assume that's what was happening, because I don't know jack about cars. So again, a lead foot is not your best friend here. Braking will be necessary. But then again, even with cautious driving, unforeseen things can happen. When destroying objects in the environment, there might be some strange consequences. Such as this when I was hitting cones for a turbo. Yeah, I really wasn't expecting that. Same thing can happen when crashing into fences or really any small items. There's also debris on the road that may or may not affect you, seemingly depending on how the planets are aligned. It's a bit inconsistent at times, which can lead to some frustrating situations. In fact, most of the quirks with the game can come from what I'm going to call the word of the day: inconsistency. There's a reset button available for when you crash, get stuck, or just feel like pressing it. And although it'll normally reset you to where you went off track, sometimes I feel like it'll place you much further back. And sometimes I feel like it put me ahead. It's just a crapshoot on where you'll respawn. Another problem is with the track boundaries. Sometimes you have a bit of a shoulder that you can drive around to cut corners, but other times one small inch off of that track and you'll need to drive back to where you went out. It's usually easier just to reset yourself. Both have their risks though. Is it easier to drive back yourself to save a few seconds, or will it be quicker to respawn and hope you're not thrown back too far? Another thing is that your driver can be flung from your car. When crashing into immovable objects, if you're driving too fast, you will be ejected from your vehicle. As frustrating as it is to have to reset each time, it's still hilarious each and every time for one simple reason: ragdolls. Nothing like watching your guy crash into something, get thrown from his seat, and smack a tree groin first. But again, having this happen brings up that old inconsistency word again. I swear sometimes I just lightly kissed a rock and was magically thrown like I had smacked it at 100 miles an hour. Other times, I hit something going that speed, and nothing happens. But that's about it for the racing. After each race, you'll earn cash depending on what position you ended in and how much you destroyed. You can then spend this cash upgrading your race car. There are several different categories, all being your standard fare for racing games featuring upgrades. Engine, transmission, suspension, tires, body. The game gives you a general idea on what each upgrade does, and it tells you the horsepower boost when buying engine upgrades. But the only thing it tells you for the other stuff is things like boost speed or increases traction. I swear I'd buy some clutches or something that never noticed an acceleration increase. I'm sure it does something, but I just couldn't tell. Let's move on to the bonus events. With each cup, you get 4 to choose to play at any time for extra cash. 6 of them are simple minigames, 3 are actual demo derbies, and 3 are races that try to encourage a bit more chaos than normal. Out of all the minigames, the only 2 I was fairly decent at were the high jump and the target one. Again, this is just enjoyable to watch the ragdoll effects, and many of the landings are fairly cringeworthy. But if you're struggling in the racing and need cash to upgrade, you do have these options. Let me move on to the graphics. They are fantastic, even now. There's a high level of detail on the vehicles, with dents, shattered windows, detaching pieces, and wobbling wheels being on display. Crap will litter the track. There's also pretty cool dirt effects when driving on the tracks. And that's not even mentioning the stuff you can destroy. Speaking of the tracks, there's a total of 36, if I'm doing my math right. Each of these tracks takes place in one of 5 different locations, so you will see a bit of repetition. But even so, there's enough variation here to not get bored. Flatout was released when most racing games were starting to get licensed soundtracks, and there's no exception here. In fact, I think that the game has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, with lots of rock and punk tracks from bands I've never heard of. Thankfully, on the PC version, the songs can be found right in the installation folder, so you can rip them easily, which I did. The songs fit the mood of the game perfectly, and the only complaint I have is that once you start a race, the same song will play until you quit or restart the track. I didn't see a skip track option. Oh well. And that's Flatout for you. In a nutshell, it's a down and dirty demolition style racing game. It's not for those who just want to go fast though. Most of the times, this will lead to trouble. Controlling your car is the most important ability here, and if you can't do that, you won't get far. But with a good selection of tracks and cars, and the minigames, it's a fun way to kill a weekend, which is essentially what I did to get this review recorded. Not even looking back, because it's one of my favorite racing games. Sure, it's got some flaws, most notably the out-of-bounds inconsistencies, but I would highly recommend this one. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.